not going to be posted anywhere. It's just for Camila. Anyway, welcome to Caribbean Women of Resistance in the studio with Dollmaker Camila Bryce-LaPorte. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center. And before we get started with the program, I'd like to tell you about a few other events we have coming up. On Monday, it's Peace Corps Day, Monday, March 1st, and we're celebrating 60 years of the Peace Corps this year. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer myself. We will have a panel discussion, Bringing the World Back Home, How the Peace Corps Changed How I Live and See the World. And that is Monday evening at 7:30. And we also have our next featured artist of the month will be Dreams and Other Realities in the studio with artist Cindy K. Rancheria on Tuesday, March 23rd. So I hope you can join us for that. Each month we have sort of a loose theme, and this is the month of March coming up has a theme of deep beauty, like finding beauty in things that when you might not otherwise see it. And we will have authors and editors from the book Deep Beauty. It's Thursday, March 27th at 7, and it's Deep Beauty, Finding Beauty When the World is on Fire. And that's with local authors, essayists. Sorry, I have one participant who keeps trying to come in, and I'm clicking to let them in, but they keep popping back. Maybe they need to call back in. So if you know anyone having trouble getting in, they might want to check their internet connection. Anyway, we also are doing comedy each month, and we're starting a new trio of comedy shows. On March 10th, we have Comic Superheroes hosted by Wayne Manigo, and we have an array of fun and funny comics lined up. That's Thursday, March 10th. We also are doing a trio of films with Professor David Rothman from Montgomery College, and it's inspired by the Maya Angelou poem, Still We Rise. We showed Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and next month's film is, next month is not a film, it's actually the series on Netflix, Self-Made, about the Madam C.J. Walker story. It's a really good show. I've watched it already. And then we'll have Michelle Obama's Becoming, the documentary, in April. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, and many others, including this month's sponsor, Buzz 365 Media. And now I'd like to get started with the program with, if I could call Camila here. Where are you, Camila? I gotta spotlight Camila. Welcome.
Hilarious. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, this is hilarious. So thank you, Diana, for trying to get me technologically savvy. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you.
There you are.
Me?
Yes. Welcome, Camila.
There she is.
Yay, good to see you and your dolls there.
Thank you. Now, I don't know which one you're seeing. I think you're seeing through the telephone. So I'm going to walk you. How is the reception? Are you getting reception?
The audio is okay. It's a little delayed video.
Okay.
But we've worked out the audio problem that we had.
All right. Well, here you go.
So, great.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Hi, Bernie and Adrian and all the girls from the class. I appreciate you all being here, and my friends from Folklife. Olivia, those of you that I can see in my family. So we're going to take a I had a PowerPoint, but I'm not sure that we'll get to it. I'm going to try to share the screen. I don't know, but first I'm going to introduce you to the dolls. Many of you from the class have already met these people. And so we'll just take a tour. This is not the shed, Bernie. This is a room that I converted. I forgot to take pictures, but there is a shed. There is an art shed. So as you can imagine, one side of the room is full of books, right? What else would it be? And this is my painting from my Aunt Bev, who I think is on the line. And this is from Bev and my father's exhibition. So this is where I begin. My work begins with the research, okay? And the research is generally on it's on African American culture, and specifically now, Latino women and women of the Caribbean. So we'll start from the beginning. If you can see this, the first doll, can you see this? The first doll was the Congo Queen. She's the one in the back. We did that in class. She's the Congo Queen of Panama, and she is, every year they have a carnival festival, and the Carnival Queen is part of the celebration, the African celebration from Cologne, but now I think it's celebrated all over the country. The next to her is Susan Julie Horse. Susan Julie Horse is a Black Seminole. If you know about the Black Seminole, can you see them? The Black Seminole women are actually descendants of the Gullah and the Seminole Indians. And these are the people that escaped South Carolina. They were invited or coerced by the Spanish government to go down to Florida. And why is she represented here? One, because at the time, Florida was part of the Spanish Caribbean, and also her people, her descendants are now in Bahamas and Mexico. And I believe that the Smithsonian did a program on the Black Seminole, the Muskogos. So her descendants would be the Muskogos and the Black Seminoles of the Bahamas. Next to her is Celine of Haiti. Celine of Haiti. She was a voodoo princess. She's the daughter of an African woman and a Corsican king or a Corsican soldier. And she's also a voodoo priestess. And just before the Haitian Revolution, she inspired the people through one of her voodoo ceremonies. That is the folk legend. And it's because of her that she inspired them to fight and to win. Next to her is a the blue mermaid is Yemoja. Yemoja Bailando con sus hijos is a tribute to the power of womanhood. Yemoja is an Orisha. She's part of the Yoruba culture that exists throughout the Caribbean. And this year, she was inspired by all of the work that women, the women that gathered for the marches and inspired the win and the election of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
And Camila, you mentioned before we started that people are welcome to ask you questions along the way.
You're welcome to ask questions. All of my classmates know these dolls, but yes.
Yes, Lauren says she's excited to see Camila and our class. And so you can either ask questions in the chat or you're welcome to unmute yourself and just ask as we go along.
We had a great class. I guess we're mostly all senior women. And as it turns out, everybody was involved with historical reproduction of some kind. And everybody did it differently. And so at some point, if you all have your dolls or if you could talk about your work, it would be wonderful. I'm going to go through the process here. This one is probably the most contemporary. Most of my dolls are based on folklore, people that existed during the era of slavery. This one is the only one that did not. This is Celia Cruz. She's my Cuban representative, and the reason is, although Celia Cruz is a devout Catholic, her music is based on, a lot of it celebrates Lukumi. That's the Yoruba tradition in Cuba. And why is she dressed like this? I wondered why. This is when I realized what I was doing. That these people have these faces because when I was a child, I went to, and maybe Lilia can tell you, I went to this one, not a child, I was a young woman. And my aunts took me to a place in Portobello, and there was the Shrine of the Black Madonna. And it's amazing what sticks in your head. And the way they were dressed, there was something about the experience that stuck with me. So all of my dolls, for me, reflect that experience. Um, Next to her is Anta Njai. Anta Njai was in, she's also known as Anna Kingsley. And she is also from um, Spanish East Florida. What's remarkable about her, there are two things that are remarkable. One is that she was captured in Senegal. She was married to a man by the name of Zechariah Kingsley, a British person living and working amongst the people of Cuba, the Spanish people of Cuba, the Cuban and the Spanish government in Florida. She happened to be very smart. She bore him 4 children and ran his plantations. When the Americans were coming to Spanish Florida and they threatened to take the plantation, she contacted the Spanish authorities and let them know. They sent a boat to pick up everyone on her plantation, and then she burnt it down. And because of her loyalty, the Spanish government gave her her own land and her own slaves. If you ever get a chance to go to the Kingsley plantation, you'll see that it's set up like a village compound. And she has her own house. Her house is gigantic, and his house is even bigger. And the people working for them, the enslaved, all have homes on the perimeter made out of something called tabby. And tabby was brought to the United States. It's like a shell, a cement mortar it's made out of shells. Well, the other thing that's interesting about her is that she's cousin to Gorgie and Jai. I didn't know at the time I was making her that that's who she was. She's called the Lost Princess, that her family didn't know what happened to her. And they found out just shortly before Gorky passed away, and they were able to reunite with her. This is also your
Camila,
yes.
I
Hi.
also wanted to say that, she's a great great grandparent of Janetta Coles, of Dr. Janetta Coles.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And Janetta was a friend of she is a friend of my uncle's, who are hopefully still on the air. Isn't that amazing? So she's dressed. This is not how she would normally dress. She actually used to dress in an African attire or something similar to it. There's a description of her walking along the shores of Cuba and Haiti, when at some point the American chased them out. They went to Haiti, she came back, and there's a description of her walking along the shore with her entourage. But I dressed her in this attire. Our assignment was to find lost pieces or pieces from a thrift store. But I dressed her in a mantilla and with the cross because she became a devout Catholic. And also to emphasize that she was a Latina. She's a multilingual person. She's part of the Great Atlantic Creole. population, of which there are many, and certainly the Njais, right, Diana? They're all multilingual people. This is Yemoya again. This one, she will have a small child, which you'll see, which I'm making right now. But this is Yemoya praying for us. This one was originally a white doll. She was dressed as a ghost. Yemoya is queen of the sea, so she's wearing a dress. It's kind of a Japanese pattern. She has one shell, and the pins, pearls, and the cowrie shell are representative of her. When she's complete, she'll have a child resting in her hands, like so. This is the beginning of the child. Can you see? And the Yemoja, for a lot of the enslaved, believe that the people that were drowned at sea, either by suicide or deliberately thrown overboard, were rescued by Yemoja. And when I created her, I was very concerned about all of us, and we needed rescuing. So this is my take on please save us. Next to her is Grand Nanny. This is Nanny of the Maroons. Let's see a thread out here. So Nanny was a Maroon Ghanaian, Ashanti, and she is one of the national heroes of Jamaica. Nanny and her brothers terrorized the English on the island of Jamaica. Her objective was to free her people. Like other Maroons, she ran into the hills of Jamaica and created her own society. There is a town named after her. She caused so much havoc that the English government gave her her own land and with autonomy, with the promise that she wouldn't raid and steal slaves. Well, she couldn't keep that promise. So they went after her and eventually killed her. But she inspired many people and led many people, and she speaks to the character and the spirit of Caribbean people, I think. Not only that, but we are descendants, my family are descendants of some of her followers.
Great. And Camilla, if I could add about Granny Nanny,
Yes.
there's an anthropologist, Harcourt Fuller, who is from Jamaica, but he's based down in Georgia at one of the universities. He is an expert on the Maroon people, and he's going to do a talk for us. He brought the Granny Nanny performers to Silver Spring a few years ago. Maybe some on the call had seen that. And then he's working on a project now on Black money inspired by people in the African diaspora. So he's going to do a talk for us probably in June.
Okay, great.
So
thank you.
And I love that doll.
Thank you. She's wearing the leaves. Grand Nanny was a guerrilla fighter, and she taught her men how to camouflage themselves. She would dress them like bushes. So they were up in the mountains, the Blue Mountains, and when the English came, they would ambush them. And because they were dressed like bushes, they didn't know that they were coming. And this is supposed to be flames. She would burn down the plantations or whatever she needed to burn down to make her point. That's where I like to look at it. This up here, can you see? Behind her, this picture back there, that was one of the inspirations. And I think if the Panamanians there are here, this is a painting done by Hendrix Kelly. He was a resident of Washington, D.C., a Panamanian-born painter. And that painting inspired a lot of the work for me too. This one belonged to my mother, and it represents the woman at top is the Congo Queen, and the other women are the French immigrants that came, French and Caribbean immigrants that came to Panama to help build the canal. And each one of those women represents a different country. Next to her is, her name is Mattie Lowe. Mattie Lowe is a Georgia farmer. She represents the Gullah people. What's amazing about the Gullah people, like the Garifuna, is they've maintained so much of their culture, and their descendants go throughout the Caribbean. So you'll find their descendants not only among the Black Seminoles of Florida, in the Bahamas, among the Americans in Trinidad and Tobago. The spiritual Baptist tradition came out of the Gullah tradition. After the Revolutionary War, the British promised the Americans, the enslaved that fought with them, to free them and to give them land. Well, the land they gave them was in Trinidad, and that was the beginning of their journey. They endured persecution even in the country of Trinidad, the spiritual Baptists, because they felt free, or they wanted to worship as they wanted to worship, which was a more African base. It was still Christian, but it was a more of an Afro-Christian tradition. And many of the songs they sang, similar to the Muskogos, they still maintain those songs that they learned through the Gullah tradition. But they're sung, with a different rhythm. One is truly Caribbean, the other one is truly Mexican or Afro-Hispanic. This one here, holding the baby, that is the mulatto Solitude of Guadalupe. Solitude was born of an African woman and a white man, a Frenchman, and she was enslaved in Guadeloupe. And before the French Revolution, these people were actually free. When Napoleon came into power, he determined that they needed to reinstate slavery. And they attempted to disarm all of the Black soldiers that were on Guadeloupe. Well, this woman, along with several others, would have none of it. And she decided she did not want to, they knew what this was. They did not want to go through slavery. So she joined a guerrilla group to fight off the French. And in the process, they fought, they lost, and she was pregnant during this fight. And they, rather than killing her as they would the others, they waited until she gave birth in November. And the day after she gave birth, they executed her. But now she's a folk hero in Guadeloupe. The one in the white, this is a bambula dancer from the Virgin Islands. There was a woman named Queen Kozaya in the Virgin Islands. Queen Kozaya was a coal carrier. And the coal carriers these were all women. They would carry loads of coal on their heads. You see the basket on her head. And they would carry it from the ships or from the mines to the ships. They were only earning like a penny. So she wanted a raise, and she decided to have a revolt. It was supposed to be a nonviolent revolt. At the end of the revolt, they got a raise, but it was like a piece of a penny. It wasn't even a significant amount, but the fact is that she got something. So every year, the Bambula dancers in St. Croix and St. Thomas, Diana, you may know better, but I think the Bambula dancers of the Virgin Islands celebrate her victories in a dance, in a parade and a dance, and it's called Dollar for Dollar. It says Dollar for Dollar celebration. So these are this 11. There are a few more in my shed, Bernadette. There are a few more there. And now I'm working on another kind of rebel, and her name is, can you see this? Let me see. This is Luisa. Luisa was a cacique from Puerto Rico. She was a Taino Indian. And she was trying to save her people from slavery. She married a mulatto, or was promised to a mulatto conquistador. And the other caciques found out, and they thought she was trying to do it to save her people. The other conquistadores, they found out what she was going to do, and they killed her. But she lives, the area that she, there's an area in Puerto Rico, and it's called Luisa, and it's probably the heaviest Black populated area in Puerto Rico. Olivia, are you familiar with this place? Luisa? I don't know if Olivia can hear me. But when we were kids, that was one of the places that my father, who was a sociologist and anthropologist, specializing in Afro-Caribbean culture, that was one of the places where he studied, and we actually lived among those people. It was quite different. It was very poor at the time. They had no running water, no stove. My mother had to cook outside. They had a different existence. That was at the time. That was the late 50s, early 60s. So the memory of this stays with me. It was the first time. It wasn't that the people I knew weren't poor. We didn't know we were poor, and we had a different understanding of who we are. So this experience inspired and just my life experience inspired my telling the story. For a long time, for many of us Afro-Caribbeans and Latina girls growing up in the United States, especially in the 60s, there seemed to have been no place for us. There's no recognition that we were here. There was barely any recognition that African-American women or Hispanic women were here. So somebody's talking.
Could everyone please mute? I'm trying to catch people. So we just let new people in and there. Okay.
All right. So when I, there was a period of time when after a while, it gets to you. You feel like you don't belong. You're looking for a place of belonging. You're looking for acceptance and people who understand and get you. And really, when you're an immigrant and this is most of your life is here, you don't really belong anywhere. You're sort of in this nebulous place. And putting the dolls together helped me retell my story. And in the process of doing it and doing the investigations, I realized that there were other young women especially now contemporary immigrants who are going through the same thing. So the dolls are childlike because it's intended for young girls. It's intended to draw them in. They don't look, they're very pretty rebels because with the exception of Nanny, well, there's several of them would have done warfare. Susan Julie Knight, who's dressed as an dressed as the Black Seminole. Remember at the time, Black Seminole Indians, Black Seminole people were being hunted down. They were driven out of Florida by Andrew Jackson. They had 3 wars with him. They won 2, lost 1. The agreement was that they would leave and go on the Trail of Tears. They went on the trail. They took a boat from Tampa. I mean, a boat from Miami, went across to Tampa and did that Trail of Tears. And when they got to Oklahoma and the Indian Territory, the Indians wanted, the other Native Americans, they wanted to enslave them, and they would have none of it. So they kept going. They went into Texas, and they were in a fort until the US government required that they be expelled, and they went further south into Mexico, all along the way, fighting for themselves. And when her husband, John Horse, or they call him Juan Caballo, he was a bilingual Black Seminole. And it's not clear whether his family came directly from Africa or if he was also a Gullah. He was also multiracial. He was also multilingual, and he served as a scout. He served as a warrior, and he served like an ambassador, speaking for his people in the highest offices of this country. When he was gone, either speaking to the American government or the Mexican government representing his people, his wife was left vulnerable. She had to be able to ride. She had to be able to fight. And people forget that most of these women were wives and mothers, and that they had to do everything that the men had to do, except in a skirt. Okay? So nobody was, when these women were working in the field, nobody was saying, well, you bring in less, you can bring in a little less because you're a woman. No, they had to perform as men and give birth and run the household at the same time. So what I'd like with this collection is for it to be shown somewhere where there's children. I'm going to have, in order to do this, I do a lot of research, as you can imagine. I would like it to be accessible. And when people talk about, Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman, they should know that the experience of women in the Caribbean and in Latin America is global. It's not just one thing, it's regional. We're having the same experience. We have been interacting since the 1500s. Black and Hispanic people have walked in the America. That's why you have something called California, Montana. Where do you think those names came from, right? The Carolinas, all of that. The Black and Latino, well, they weren't Black, they weren't Latino then, but the Spanish and African people discovered these places. They ran into these places. And we have to be part of the American story as well, especially as the diaspora of Black women and Latin American women is changing. Our consciousness of ourselves is changing. So we have to be inclusive in this. So there, you can see I have a lot of books, but there's some that I want to recommend to you before I start working. There's a book that the Smithsonian put out a long time ago. It's called The Female Immigrants to the United States, the Caribbean, Latin American, and African experience. It was done by my father and Dolores Mortimer. It still rings true. There's a book by a woman named Marta Vega in New York. It's Women Warriors of the Afro-Latino Diaspora. And in this book, she not only covers the areas that I cover, but she also talks about the plight of the Andean women, the women in Venezuela. You need to take a look at that if you can. There's a book called Songs and Stories of the Diggers' Sons. This talks about the experience of Caribbean people in Panama. And it was horrendous. You know, they went through horrendous hardships, but that canal got built. And some of that land that the canal is under is floating on top of actually belonged to, we met a couple of the people who own that land. So it's important that you take a look at it. Marta Vega also talks about the altar of my soul, living traditions of Santeria. When these Caribbean people came, the Afro-Latinos came, they brought with them their own traditions. They may have been Christians, but it was an Afro-Christian. It was infused with a lot of African imagery, a lot of, especially from the Yoruba, there was a lot going on. But you'll find that in the Caribbean and in South America, where these women lived, they also were forced to do like their own medical practices. So it's the way the slaves survived. They became really adept healers, and they also knew how to use it to inflict pain. So how do you control women who have, Black women that came here, they came here with those skills. They came from Africa with those skills. They had to know how to do this. They would, whether it's in Suriname or the United States or Cuba, these traditions still exist to this day. Or if you go to Central America, these traditions still continue to exist. And the way to diffuse their power and their effectiveness was to malign, to put it down, right? It's not to say that you need to be a Santeria or Lukumi or anything like that, but understand the power that they possess and why they possess these powers, and respect it. You know, leave it alone, respect it, but understand that it was a way to keep people down. There's another book, again, you know, this is all about nepotism, but my aunt wrote this book called The People of African Ancestry in Panama, 1501 to 2012. And why it's not only what it says about Panama, but also what it says about the people of the Caribbean. There's a lot of information here also about Colombia and Venezuela. Remember that Panama was part of Colombia. They talk about both the colonial Blacks and, of course, people like me who are part of the Caribbean Creoles. They call us Creoles or Criollo or Antilles. They have lots of different names for us all over the world, but we are the people of the Caribbean, and our experiences, with the exception of race, this is where we have in common, but we come to the picture with other kinds of information. There's a book also about Anna Maria Jean Jai Kingsley. And this book, written by Daniel Schaefer, explores what's going on in Florida and the relationship between, you know, Spanish East Florida, the British, the Americans, and Florida is a dynamic place at the time. It's an important book. There are people coming south from the north, including the men who owned my husband's great-grandfather. They migrated from Maryland to Georgia and from Georgia into Florida, and they became landowners. They're celebrated there as industrialists, but understand that these people have a direct link to England. They have a different understanding of land. They were farming tobacco in the Chesapeake, and then they went to Florida to do logging. In Georgia, they farmed cotton. So this says something about that population as well. And then my latest book, Clandestine. I just got this. It's the Times and Secret Life of Maria Audi Reddick. And it was written by Carol Ife Keene and William Damini Keene. These are friends of my family. If you can, these books are all available online. And the ones that really profoundly affected me, these came out of the Library of Congress. It was called I Was a Slave. And these are the oral histories of African-American former slaves. Their histories were collected during the WPA. So it took me a long time to get through them. They break your heart. But in order to do this work, you know, your heart has to be broken a little bit. And it was then that I understood that, you know, the pain that I went through, the discrimination I went through was not just about me. It was about everything I represented. It was about my Blackness. It was about my foreignness. It was about me being Latino. And it's about me not accepting that little cage, that little box that they wanted to put me in. So it was very painful, extraordinarily painful reading, but I keep it on my desk every day to remember who came before me and the hard work all over. Don't think that your story is an isolated story. I don't care if you're Black or Latina or whatever you are. Don't think your story is an isolated story. There were also a lot of white women involved in this story. A lot of white women were persecuted as well. And they are also mothers to some of our most revered heroes, Benjamin Banneker. You know, you got to think, what were these women going through too? Who is stratifying us? Who is doing this to us? And we have to tell the complete story. I hope eventually that's what will happen. That's what inspired me during the Trump administration. We cannot handle the division any longer. Our country has to move forward. And one of the ways is by telling everybody's story. So I'm taking responsibility for the people that look like me, and I hope you take responsibility for the people that look like you. And we'll get started, okay? How was that? So I'm gonna show you how I start. Most of us, Adrian, Bernie, I don't know if Lizette is on, but we all studied with a woman, and Lauren, we studied with a woman named Lauren, Wendy Daniels. She teaches out of Montgomery College. And when I first took that class, I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna be the only one here wanting to tell a personal story or a historic story. And will these people understand? I thought, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have, you know, I'm gonna be dealing with women who just wanna have that little Cupid doll. And that wasn't the case. Everyone was doing something extraordinary and telling extraordinary stories, things I hadn't heard about. And they brought such skill, which they'll tell you, I have a sewing machine and it is a joke, but but I've learned how to use glue, and and I've learned how to develop patterns that are simple. And but you know, I might have 4 or 5 patterns, but I can manipulate them, right? This pattern and that pattern are essentially the pattern for this doll and this doll are essentially the same. But I can manipulate them with nips and tucks to make them tell a different story. And part of them being on the cone, one of the things my dolls are all on cones. Well, not all of them, but most of them, is that you can move the fabric and create a different story, right? You can put another thing underneath there and create movement or create a butt or a line. So it's just another way of doing this. So we're gonna, let's see, we're gonna get started. I'll show you how we get started. And maybe somebody can share. Who has one of their dolls? Bernie, who has a doll? Adrian, so does somebody have a doll in there?
What do you want to see?
Let me see what you got. Let me see show them what you're doing while I do this.
All right. So for those of you that were at, what was it? The museum.
Yes.
This is the costume that I worked on at the museum, but now she's on the doll. So this is the costume on the doll. I just recently finished her hat.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I do French antique reproductions. And so Linda and I have been going back and forth about parasols and Adrian helping. And I finally did come across a frame and a good pattern. So that's another project that I'm working on. And also I've got a draft costume coming up that I'm working on, a totally different costume. So I do French antique reproductions, of course.
Can you tell them the history of antique reproductions in Africa? Do you remember the story with African Americans and the European reproduction of those dolls?
Not sure what you're getting at, but basically the dolls that I do were created in France in the late 1800s, like 1870 something through 1897. And there are several different kinds. The doll that I just showed you is called a Jameau. And there are what I call brown dolls. There's also really black dolls that the French actually did recreate or did make.
So after slavery, well, during slavery, what was popular were like those topsy-turvy cloth dolls. So it was where they're called now they're called slave dolls. And Black women would make them for their children and also for the white, masters or overseers' kids. And those dolls represented Black life. Well, during Reconstruction, they were used to undermine our progress, right? They were turned into minstrels, and rather than appreciating the artistry, because there's true artistry involved in those dolls, they were used to create stereotypical images of us. And so I can't remember the name, maybe somebody there can remember, but there was a movement by several Black entrepreneurs to enlist the services of European doll makers because they had perfected bisque, right? And they were able to achieve that brown color and made the dolls more realistic and more middle class. Can you speak? Do you know the difference between a German? Once we had a discussion between the German and the French.
You mean me, Camilla?
Yes, you. Yes, Bernie, sorry.
That's okay. Basically, the difference between the German and the French is, well, the French dolls were actually first. They were before the German dolls. And they actually are very, very refined in terms of the fabric and the lace and all of that that's used on them. And just to go back a little bit, the French dolls, there are actually so-called brown versions that were made in the same clothing that, let's say that French children wore at the time, but they were made in brown bisque, shipped through the southern United States. And one of the things that I really want to research more and maybe even do a collection of is I want to do a collection of dolls dedicated to Anne Rice's book, The Feast of All Saints.
Wow.
That's the only book that Anne Rice wrote that was not about witches and warlocks. It was about it was about the gens de couleur libre in New Orleans and the Creoles. And I don't know if you remember, there was a scene where there was a mother that was negotiating a dowry for her daughter to have a townhouse and the like. And so I want to do a grouping of dolls that's dedicated to the story of the Feast of All Saints.
While she's speaking, I wanted to tell you, I forgot to tell you this part. To do the dolls, you know, we do all the research. Let me see if I can turn this around. So I found a face. This is actually a little cousin. Her name is Sydney. And she looked to me, she's half Puerto Rican, and she had the look that I wanted for the doll.
Camila, you need to turn on your audio, your video. We
Wait,
can't see.
This isn't it? You can't see this?
No.
You can't see me? I can see me.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't see Camilla's desk.
You can't see
Camilla's showing her desk.
just my desk. Can you see
Right.
this? Raise your hand if you can see it. You can see it? Okay. So
I
here,
see too much of me. I don't like that.
I like you. No, because you got to talk.
Camila, we just don't see your head. We don't see you. We see your
Oh, I
desk.
don't want you to see me.
That's all right.
Okay. Can you?
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Who said that? All right, Terry. All right. So Sydney Gonzalez. So I found a picture that I liked of her, and I drew it. And the reason I drew it was to get more familiar with her face, right? So this is the photograph. This is Sydney. And then I'm gonna Bernie can tell you about how she does her research. Then I looked up the Taino Indian costume that I liked. This is the one. And I'm going to, on the cone, the doll, this is actually, I don't know if you can see this. This is the beginning right here. The dolls, my dolls stand on the cone, not with legs, except for this little one. And what I'm doing now is carving the head. The head begins with styrofoam. So so while they are talking to you, I'm going to continue to start shaping the head. And you can watch what I do. It begins with a styrofoam ball. I put a pole in it. You'll see me put a pole in it. And that will go through the torso. So I'm sorry, Bernie. I just want to, I realized I was pushing and prodding, not explaining. Go ahead, tell them about the research.
So as I said before, well, there's three main kinds of French antique dolls that I love. There's one doll that is called a Bru, B-R-U, that is after the creator Leon Casimir Bru. There's another doll called the Jumeau, who that doll is fashioned after the manufacturer Emile Jumeau. And then there are also Steiners. And so my research, I'm in my studio, and I, like Camilla, I have books behind me that were written by one in particular. There's a French scholar of antique dolls. His name is Francois Temier, and he is a noted scholar for antique dolls. He's written the Brew book. He has written the Jameau book. He has written actually an encyclopedia of French dolls with his wife. And so and there are many other books that I have surrounding me, and I research what I do based on, because I want my costumes to be authentic in terms of what was appropriate at the time. And so when I sew, I can't use any technique or items that were not in existence at the time, which is really challenging for sewing and interesting. And so I just go through my books and study the painting techniques and also the costuming. And so there's, I guess you could say, two parts to what I do. I first either make the doll, paint the head, and then once that is completed, or I have a head that I find acceptable or I think is acceptable, I start on the costuming. And I make what I draft costume and to test the pattern, test the fit. And then once that's all done, I go ahead and cut the good stuff, the silk and the like. That's it in a nutshell.
And, you know, the other thing is some of the early Caribbean dolls were made exactly like that. They were made, well, they were high-end dolls. They were made for an elite clientele, probably planters' children's, right? Children's.
Right.
You hear that? That's on the end of the end. That's what I get for hanging out with children. And they were made with that in that technique. It was more of like a novelty doll. Who else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Camila, when I was young, I remember that my aunt, on the top of the bed, my aunts would have, my great aunts would have these dolls that whose I think that the tops were manufactured,
Yes.
but the bottoms actually were crocheted, and they were these really large crocheted bottoms, and they would always be on the top of the bed.
Yep.
And I mean, I grew up, and I grew up with them, but I also, and my mom is from Guyana, and she also gave me a doll, which I wish I still had, because she really wanted us to keep it. And it was the doll given to her by someone, given to her mother during the era of Queen Victoria.
Wow.
And and I cannot believe that, you know, at the time I was like, well, what do I want with this, you know, this white china doll? But and I'm not sure what has happened to it. But
Go find it. Probably worth a lot of money.
it is. She told me that it would be worth a lot of money already, but I think I know where it is. But
I don't know.
it may be in the hands of another relative. But
I don't know.
the thing is that it's really interesting how that tradition of doll making, or different traditions of doll making, have been a part of so many cultures and communities. And I'm not a doll maker myself, but I do have a small collection of dolls from Africa and the Caribbean. And it's interesting because in terms of dolls in different parts of the world, some, you know, do not have faces because it was thought, you know, you didn't want something that looked too much like a human being. There's some like, Camila, you have an Aquaba doll in back of you.
Where?
Right? And the one with the one from Ghana.
Oh, where is that? I don't have her in here. You see it here?
With the very round head.
I'm looking and I don't see her.
Yeah, it's a wooden doll. And no, don't stop what you're doing. But you know, some dolls were sort of like wishes, you know, when in Ghana, when children, when mothers wanted a child and they'd had problems, having a child.
Right.
They would wear the Aquaba doll on their backs, and just like you carry a child on your back in a wrapper, and then I guess it was again like a wish and like a prayer to have a healthy, beautiful child. And I saw one there, but I think it's really interesting how we associate dolls only with kids, but dolls have been used for so many different reasons. That's the one. Yes, that's exactly it.
And when you say like kids, Lilia and Harrington, do you remember the dolls that they would have? Oh, and there's my Aunt Melva. How are you? Do you remember in Panama the dolls that Auntie would make or that would be made when we were kids? It's sort of similar to what you're talking about.
Diana, I wanted to tease you about that doll because one of the reasons why I make reproductions is because I can't afford the real ones. A real French antique doll, whether it's a beautiful brown doll or a white doll, if first of all, the porcelain, if it's in good condition, and obviously the costume, because these dolls go back to like 1880 something.
Yeah, that's when hers went back to.
I kid you not, in an auction catalog, I saw a Gemot that went at auction for $130,000.
Wow.
I also saw in an auction catalog a beautiful brown brew, and this was when I was still working. Beautiful brown brew, and I actually thought about how could I borrow against my retirement to get that doll, because at the time I had so many more years to work, and if I bought that doll, then I could have time to pay back into my retirement. So it's a lot less expensive for me to make reproductions than it is for me to even think about buying an original.
Yeah.
How much goes into what's the cost, Bernadine, of making this?
A really good and reproductions, those are copies of real dolls, and you don't ever, I just want to make it clear that I don't ever try to pass off a reproduction as original. Anytime I make a doll, I incise my initials on the back of the head with the year that I made the doll, so that if anybody bought it, they would know it's a reproduction. But good reproductions can go for thousands of dollars because of the amount of time that it actually takes to either paint a really good head. You can make the wigs by hand out of really good material. The fabrics are usually silk, like Dupioni silk or China silk. And so, yeah, and depending on the size, I mean, reproduction dolls can go from what we call 12 or 14 inch. Those 12 inches are the smallest that I make. And I'm looking at some of the bodies that I have now. I have a body that goes up to 24 inches. So she would be about a 28-inch doll. So depending on what I put into that doll, it could be maybe $1,200 or $1,500.
Wow.
I wanted to flip. Melva, are you there?
I'm here.
Can you talk about, do you remember dolls when we were growing up or when you were growing up in Panama?
Well, yes. My recollection of dolls really comes from when my father, he was somewhat like the Santa Claus in our family. And I remember one Christmas where he surprised us all by getting black dolls. That was, I'm calculating, may have been 60 years ago at least. But I'm also reflecting on the fact that we don't seem to have those types of dolls on the market anymore. I mean, those dolls are quite different from the artistry that you folks are putting into doll making. I'm just talking about the dolls that are sold in Walmarts or other department stores at Christmas time. Because there was a time when we had a choice. You know, you could get a white doll or you could get a black doll. But I find it, and I don't know if this is only my perception, but I find that of late, the market for black dolls has shrunk. I mean, I see some Barbies that are somewhat, they may come close in a little bit, but I'm just wondering what is happening currently to the market for the types of dolls that children, especially girls, would get at Christmas time. And
How do
if
you find them different?
Camila, can I respond to that?
I'd like to respond to
please,
that
go
too.
ahead.
So you go first.
Go ahead.
Oh, me?
yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
Linda, go ahead, and then whoever said they wanted to go next.
Bernie, I'll
I
go after.
think in-
Okay.
I think in general, we're people like me and Camilla and Bernadine, et cetera. We're making art dolls, and so they're either one of a kind or they're it's not like you mass produce them. And I think what you're seeing on the market is generally mass produced, and therefore more viable for somebody to purchase, for their children and so forth. For example, my dolls that I created, I could show you some later, but
Show them now while you're talking.
oh, okay. I'm like Camilla. I'm very much into looking at the history of women in general. It's not just any particular culture, but it's across the world. And I represent significant women who've made an impact on their societies through dolls. And I actually just started a website. My name is Linda Cato, so it's Cato Historical Dolls, that tells the tales of these women. And so there's just a variety here, but and I'm really into, like Bernadine, into fashion history as well, and to making sure, putting a lot of detail into their clothing, all the way down to the underwear and the socks. This is one of, her name is Noor Jahan. And I'm sorry, my Chromebook is pretty lousy, so you can't really get a good video. But she was an empress during the Mughal Empire and it encompassed most of South Asia and Central Asia during the 16th century. But she had power of her own. She was, really the power of the time, and her doll is an articulated doll. Mine are all the way, they have joints and so forth, and they're made of air dry clay like Camilla's. And there's a lot of work that goes into the accessories, the jewelry, the bead embroidery. Everything is silk or beaded lace. And she's got, if you look underneath her, she's wearing, I don't know if you've noticed, but the pajamas. The pajamas, the pants and so
call it
forth.
pantuflas in Spanish.
Pantuflas?
Yeah, and another one is I'm really into Latin American women who helped gain independence from Spain. And her name, this is Manuela Sáenz, who was from Colombia. And Colombia and Ecuador in those days were sort of all part of Gran Colombia. But she partnered with Simón Bolívar and was very much involved in actually fighting on the front lines, unlike the ladies of America, when the U.S. independence, you don't hear about a lot of women getting involved. These were actually doing guerrilla warfare and all kinds of stuff. And she later also became his hostess, and a key advisor. But again, I'm really into bead embroidery and all this. So this is some of the work on her, and she carries a flag of Colombia. But more recently, I did one of this one. I usually don't do people who are still alive, but this one is
Amanda Gorman. Wow.
Amanda, that yellow, wonderful coat
cool.
and whatever.
That's
and
great.
her skirt and her boots and everything. I fell in love with her. She's carrying a little condensed version of her poem, and her hair and everything. I just fell in love with her. And I even made the earrings where she got them. They were gifted to her from Oprah Winfrey, and so I tried to copy that and everything. So she's a real my inspiration for recovering from the Trump years. So and as she said, I also do things. I have a bunch of them, and if you want to see my website, I have them all on there. I'll be happy to send the information. But a lot of Asian women as well, but mine are all over. I'm European, Western Europe, Central Europe, everything, and it's all part of educating people about women's significance in their cultures, and that's why I call it the her story. And we see so much information now from feminist historical research on women who've otherwise either been overlooked or even vilified by men throughout his male historians. But getting to that point about the doll market, it's very much dominated by big manufacturers like Mattel or American Girl or whatever, and they do it in mass. They mass produce, and so you won't see what really are art dolls, a limited edition, or one of a kind like I do. And so if you look on Etsy, I highly recommend that, because that's where you'll see people doing individual ones and varying prices and so forth for those. Mine are not really for children, because these are art dolls, and
My dolls are not. My dolls are collectibles also.
yeah, they're collectibles. But if people wanted things for children, I'd be happy to custom do something that's more affordable that a kid could break, but I think you will.
I think also. Go ahead, Bernie, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that I think that, unfortunately, well, so many things are going through my mind. I can remember this doll my cousin had when I was, I don't know, 8 years old, that was just so beautiful. And anyway, it was her Christmas present, and I thought it was going to be mine, but anyway. But I think that over time, what has happened to, like Linda was saying, it's the mass production. But I also think, unfortunately, that young girls are not necessarily taught that it's okay to play with dolls anymore. It's not okay to want a dollhouse, or it's I think our society is going towards sports and going in other directions, and little girls are not oftentimes taught that it's okay to play with dolls. And I think that, unfortunately, the mass market industry for dolls has reflected that.
What are your thoughts, Adrienne? What are your thoughts on that?
And ladies, could you please share your websites in the chat? People are asking.
Yeah.
Okay. And Adrienne, you just need to unmute.
Yeah, hi. It's not something that I'm really familiar with in terms of what's available now. Of course, I took the class. My dolls sort of run the gamut there. I have white dolls, I have black dolls, I have mixed race dolls, and they're art dolls as well. But yeah, I don't have an answer in terms of what's available either on the mass market or anything else. Because to tell you the truth, I never really even collected dolls. I just started making them in the class. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about what's actually out there. I can only talk about what I've done.
Adrian, do you have one nearby that you could show us?
If you hang on a second, I'll see if I can grab one. They're in another room.
Okay, and also Camila, I'm going to bring you back on video. If people are asking if you could describe what you are doing.
Oh, well, I just made a mistake. So this is why Linda doesn't like the clay that I use. Linda, are you there? Where's Linda?
Well,
Unmute,
Camila,
unmute.
why, until you get your mistake corrected, can I just add a little
Yes, please.
extra?
Yes,
Yeah, the reason I asked, you know, I know that you folks are into very special art here, and I'm really blown away by the work that goes into it, the research that goes into it, to the work you do, and I have a tremendous admiration for you. But one of the things that I'm involved with here, we have yes, I am part of the West Indian Museum Society here in Panama, and most of what we do, we try to promote a healthy respect for Black culture. We get donations to give gifts to the children of Panama at Christmas time. And over the year, we've been doing this for about 20 years in conjunction with the US organization. They send us the money and we buy the gifts here. But over the years, I've noticed that the manufactured Black dolls on the market have been significant. The amounts are significantly reduced. This past year, I could not find any Black dolls. We still find, and I agree with the lady who said that, yeah, maybe young girls are not playing with dolls as much or looking forward to get dolls as gifts. But there still are some young children who do expect to get dolls as gifts. And I remembered when we were growing up and my father brought me that first Black doll, how much of a change in my attitude, my perspective towards life and towards respect for Black people that made in my development. And one of the reasons why I push for giving the little girls dolls here, Black dolls, is because I think that lifting of their self-esteem is necessary, and it could be achieved through these manufactured dolls, but they're not being manufactured as much as they were at certain periods, maybe 20, 30 years ago. I don't know what's happening. And I'm asking, you know, is it that Black families are not interested in purchasing Black dolls for their kids?
Like someone else said earlier, some children get, you know, from progressive minded parents, maybe girls may get discouraged from playing with dolls because of that. And maybe just in general, they've gone down.
I think there's also something else at play. And one is that the women from my class, and I don't see Lizetta, but they are doing historic dolls that tell a real story about women. Now, what I've found about women of significance, and it could be a housewife, it could be one of my dolls was a Hibiera, a cane worker in Puerto Rico. But I think what happens, what I've found interesting is that the research is not available either. In order to get the research for Luisa, I have to wade through information about a tourist attraction or something. And I want real information about a real person and her impact. And I think one of the things I was going to say is, and the issues of women and resistance, if women don't protect it, Google and Facebook and Google, Facebook, Wikipedia, they can only, they are going to respond to a more significant marketplace, a marketplace that dictates the dollar. So you're going to have to insist. I don't know that it is that they don't want it. I think that more than anything, they're being told what to want and when to want it. And that's what's frightening to me.
Yeah.
When I do the research, I make a hard copy. I don't even trust my computer to keep it. And it may be that we have to start writing books again about these heroines in addition to making the dolls in order to create a demand, because that's not what's happening right here. What's happening here is that the information, and also I have to pay for this information. It's not just that I am searching for it. Once I find it, it's because I've paid for it. Imagine that I have to pay for this information. That's ridiculous. So I think that I think that there's not only a lot about, and this is before we learn really about our own cultures, about the depth of what these people achieved. Like half the characters that Linda and Bernie and Adrian come up with, I've never heard of before. This is one of the beauties of that class, is that I'm learning something about world history, about American culture, whatever it is that I'm learning it there.
Can I just wanted to jump in one more time for Melba. I don't just do antique reproductions. I concentrate on them, but I also have a line of dolls that I do that are called modern dolls, that look like you and I, people of today. And I'll just show you, Melba, this is a mold that I have of a black doll. But the part of the problem about the medium that I use is that it is porcelain, and the modern dolls that I make would not be as expensive as the French dolls, because I can use modern sewing techniques and I can use different fabric like cotton or wool or what have you. But the problem there again, for a child, because it's porcelain, if it hits the floor, it will shatter into a million pieces. And so that's the only thing about the dolls that I make. So I do both. I concentrate on antique reproductions, but I also have several molds where I make childlike dolls that aren't as expensive.
Go ahead. Who else?
I just wanted to point out, there's some comments in the chat. Alicia Gonzalez says, I know when I've gone shopping specifically for black dolls, the available inventory is definitely less than white dolls, but I've also found the cost of black dolls are more expensive than white dolls, which sadly makes it difficult for some black families to afford. And so Tammy also was curious to expand on what type of dolls were you referring to? Baby dolls, Barbie dolls. Mel, I think
Melva.
Melva responded to something about that, but
yeah, mostly baby dolls, not the type of dolls that you folks are working on, which are historic, artistic, and in a totally different category. These are, you know, we give out to hundreds of children. And let's say I would like to be able to buy 100 black dolls and distribute them to the children at Christmas time, but they're not available.
Have you tried ordering them online?
You know, I asked a friend of mine who was going to who went to Cuba, because I'm told that they produce their dolls there and they sell them at a reasonable price. And she brought me back a sample, which I shared with somebody else, and somebody else has gotten it now. But it wasn't easy for me, because I'd like to have a place where I could say maybe order 100 of these dolls, but that they look like us. They look like the variety of black and brown people in the world. And I find that it's more and more difficult. And I know I'm not addressing the kind of work that you folks are doing, but I think that if a person grows up with having an appreciation for dolls at some point in their life, maybe they can go on to do the kind of work that you folks are doing.
I think also that there are, we're looking in the Caribbean and the Americas, but there are also African manufacturers. They're small manufacturers, but they're making dolls, and they are anatomically correct. They're physically correct. And you might consider doing that. They're soft bodied dolls, so that they're not breakable. They're shippable. So it may be, and if you're talking about 100, you know, there may be a way to reduce the cost. So
where do they sell these, Camila?
I'll send you a link. I'll send you information where you can let's see, I see them at Christmas time, but I'll send you the information that I have, and you can do that. Adrian, 1 second, Melva, I wanted to see, Adrian, do you have one of your dolls to show?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Now, let's see if I can. This is actually a fantasy doll. It's called The Clockmaker's Daughter. And I was inspired in part because my father used to repair watches as a side business. So she's got wire hands, guess you can see, and everything about her is related to time in one way or another. So this was just a fun thing to do. Most of mine actually are not historical. They're people that I make up just because, you know, something strikes me as interesting or fun or something like that. And I found some of these little accessories. I think I found a watch in Florida. And then there's another little time, oh goodness, what do you call it? Hourglass, which is not seen here. And I got that, I think I got that in Florida also. So her eyes actually are made of buttons, and the skin is a copper tone. And then she's got little boots also. And I happened to find this chair, I think at a thrift store. I didn't originally plan for her to sit, but to be honest, one of the legs is a little crooked. So I was able to sit in the chair, and then you don't notice it. But
yeah, that's awesome.
They really run the gamut what I do.
Was a great.
That's a great doll. Yeah.
Please put your website or pages in the chat too, Adrian.
Well, I don't have a website. I'm, you know, Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have another one, Adrian? The Black Santa Claus?
Oh, you want to see Samuel L., huh?
Yeah, he looks like Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah. Is that the one that is, did he come to
Yes.
the presentation? Oh, okay, I've got a photo of him. He's wearing green, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. So her face is,
Well,
I'm engineering. It's going to take a minute because the clay, where's Linda? The
She's
clay-
getting Santa.
No, that was
Here.
somebody
Oh,
else.
no, Linda. Oh, here comes
here you go.
Santa.
Yeah.
Let's give Carol Johnson on.
Yeah, he's sitting also.
We should really send his photo to Samuel Jackson.
It does look like Samuel
He
Jackson.
would get a kick out of it.
Well, I think it's the hat.
Yeah, and the beard.
Beard,
And
yeah.
the beard.
And
Yeah,
the attitude.
that's him.
Yeah.
Yes, and the attitude. That's great.
He was dating one of my dolls until she left him.
That's right.
And then he was married. And that was it.
Yeah. Camila,
Yes, yes.
I don't, as I say, I don't make dolls, but I do collect. Well, I found myself with a collection of, and I realized I had a little collection when I was about 12 years old too. But this is in terms of a change.
Oh,
You know, this is an Ndebele doll from South Africa, from the I thought it was really interesting. I've actually, Camila's gotten me more interested in dolls, but what interested me was, you know, the materials and the making, you know, the use of the beadwork and the stuffing, and you know, the hat, which is a traditional hat, but using yarn.
yes.
And it's very different from this one here, which was made in the Bahamas, and it's definitely it's squishy, and it's definitely the kind of doll that you know a little kid might use in a rural community. But you see, it's painted by Amos Ferguson, who's a
Oh, yes.
yeah. Do you recognize Olivia? I don't know if Olivia's still on, but yeah, it's a nice squishy doll. And then these two dolls are from Senegal, and I would say that they're fashion dolls,
Oh, that's great.
because again, they're, you know, very simple faces, and these are embroidered eyes, and but the beauty is in, you know,
The
how
fashion.
they're costumed and how they're wrapped in traditional fashions, and you find them in all sorts of fashions. But they're basically on a wire frame and wrapped. And so just,
Beautiful.
you know, some of the diversity of dolls,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
from around Africa and the Caribbean. And so I thought I'd, you know, sort of bring them up.
Harrington Bryce, can you hear?
Great,
Harrington
man.
Bryce, can you unmute? Can you unmute?
You prefer me to shut up?
No, you're so, this handsome man is my uncle. Isn't he gorgeous?
Hi.
Beautiful,
wow.
yeah.
So, Harrington, can you tell them about Auntie Louisa and the dolls that she made? His aunt, my great aunt was a great craftswoman. Where she's from and how she used that tradition when we were growing up.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure you know much more than I do, but a couple of points I want to make. One is, yes, she was. And yes, she had, and I think somewhere there she sent some of her small dolls and some of her, Melba would remember this, the ladies, and she in particular, used to collect a lot of figurines.
Yes, yeah.
And somewhere there that there is there's a set of them, but she liked to make dolls. My mother did some of them, but nobody did them as dedicatedly as you are doing. and no one did it as dedicatedly as my aunt Louisa did. But let me make 2 points. I was listening to Melva. Melva, how are you?
I'm fine, Harrington.
But
Good to see you.
Melva, I gotta share with the with everybody else what went through my mind as I heard your comment about black dolls and your father giving you guys black dolls. Now, her father and my father were very good friends. And I do remember as I was growing up, the very first time I saw black dolls in our house. And I think it was my father who brought them in. I just a little bit off, but I sense some of what Melva is talking about when she talks about giving these young girls black dolls. One of the problems that those men had, is seeing their daughters actually with these dolls, not being able to see themselves, but more importantly, I hope you will understand this, seeing their daughters learning to serve people as maids. It was a profound thing on a lot of those men. And that is that they would like to have seen their daughters having their own child. Instead, what this represented was their daughters taking care of somebody else's child. The problem in Panama is that that's exactly what many of those women did. And a lot of these guys who were like her father, my father, and that were just upwardly mobile but couldn't get there, were hoping for greater things from their children until Mabel responded that same way. And so he responded just as your father did. And so Melva, I just want you to know, I'm just telling the young people what happened 90 years ago. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. And I just finish with one more statement, and it's sort of repetition, but somewhat purposeful. And that is, I see you talking about two different things. I like the work that you people put into making your dolls. I am sitting here stunned about the amount of work that you put into actually understanding your dolls and understanding the history and understanding there's a story to be told, whether it's told in with a white doll or black doll, a Chinese doll or a Latin doll. It's a story to be told. When we were growing up we had a lot of Asian type dolls, and that was completely for a different story. And Camila, you mentioned Portobello. Beverly will remember that we took the children to Portobello. And for those of
Tell them what Portobello is.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what Portobello is, it has a lot to do with the comments that you are making here. Portobello it's a beautiful place. It just sits on top of the ocean. But Portobello was where a lot of the Africans settled. And they developed one of the biggest holidays in Panama is the holiday of a Black Christ, in which Christ is I think they call it Black Jesus, or whatever it is, but God is worshipped as a Black man. And that is throughout Panama. And there is a special pilgrimage that is made with this Black Christ. And I don't know if it's still that way, but certainly.
Oh, yeah. 31st of October.
It's fascinating because at that point, color did not matter except for color as history, which is what you guys are talking about. Because you see white men forming that line and taking over and carrying that Black Christ. And you, Black or not, you will fight for the privilege of getting there. And you will oftentimes will be lost, lose to white men. But so what Memba is talking about, I sort of feel, it turns out that when Beverly and I and the children saw it, you'd be surprised. My Aunt Mabel always told us that we were going to go on one of these pilgrimages, and she always promised us that she was going to make sure that we learned to make, was it 2 steps forward, 1 step backward? So this thing to go a half mile, it takes you all day, all day. But it is a religious thing to be done. Remember, I was surprised when I saw Black Christ and realized essentially it was a large doll. I thought this was, all my life, I was thinking of this huge monument and realized this thing was not, I guess it was Bernadine who says one of her things are about 29 inches or something like that. Well, you understand when a kid grows up thinking of this thing as a big monument and realize that the dolls that you are dealing with 29 inches was just about what this thing was. I don't remember the essential thing, but I want you ladies to understand, I've learned a lot just listening to you, and I want you ladies to understand that I would never have thought and never have learned to appreciate what goes into making a historical doll. I can also imagine the satisfaction that comes from the very finished product and being able to show them. So with that, say hello to people in Panama.
I will.
Me hace el favor de saludar a sus hermanas, ¿ok?
Ok, cómo no, cómo no. Saludos de parte de ellos también.
And Lisa understands what you're saying. And
Yes,
What's that?
Cynthia Farrell Johnson is here. as
yes,
well.
let's bring Cynthia in. And just a quick question, Harrington, where are you located now?
I am at this very moment, I am in Williamsburg.
Oh, okay, not so far.
Where are you?
Oh, I live in DC, but work in Silver Spring. and
Cynthia,
Normal
I just want you to know
Cynthia?
that I'm glad to see you. Where in Panama are you from?
Well, I wasn't born in Panama. I was born in Brooklyn, but my folks are from Cologne. My mom was born in New Providence and my father was born in Camp Beard.
I want to thank you for that piece that somebody sent to me, or Beverly sent to me about your work. And I noticed the bandera. Bandera is flagged. And I thought, what a beautiful piece of work. But you asked me about where we in Panama, when were you at the embassy?
From 1985 to 1989.
So you were at the embassy at the time that the embassy was on Balboa Avenue.
Yes.
Beverly and the children know that area extremely well. Well, if you went a little bit toward, remember something called Muller's Building?
Yes, I have a picture of it behind.
La Casa Miller,
Yes.
which was near to the museum.
Okay.
Right, it's right next to the museum. I mean, not up, a little bit north of the museum, but that's where we all were born, in that fish market.
Oh, wow.
There's a big fish market there, and that's where we lived our first couple of years of life. And then we went to La Boca.
Oh, wow.
All right, with that, enough of the nostalgia.
My folks, they ended up living in Cologne before they came here to the States.
Yeah.
But your parents were in Cologne?
Yes. Yeah, they lived in Cologne before they came up
Where
here.
were they before?
Well, my mom, she was born and grew up part of the time in New Providence. And then they moved to Cologne.
Camila will tell you, and it's a long story, so I wouldn't bore you, but Cologne was where my grandmother was born. We are Panamanians 3 or 4 generations back. As a matter of fact, I think part of the problem we have with my grandmother is my grandmother was born in Panama, in Colón, at the time that it was all Colombian.
Changed her citizenship.
So she went through 3 different changes in thing, and eventually she decided that, like many Black Panamanians during the 1940s, to assume her husband's and her sister's nationality.
Which was Saint.
I gotta go. You guys go back. I gotta listen some more. I just enjoy this.
Just listen.
What
do you imagine that, you know, if you're in a culture that's switching like this, it's in some ways it's very reflective of what we're experiencing here in the United States. You have a diversity. Your Black population is linked by what? You know, you have a diversity in your Black population. There's Spanish-speaking Blacks, there are English-speaking Blacks. There's got to be something that holds you together. And I'm bringing this back to the dolls and the significance of having a toy that reflects you in when you're living in a community where the outside, where like when I grew up in the Canal Zone, so my understanding of Panama was very protective, right? I knew white people, but I didn't really encounter them en masse. I knew them as individuals. And the culture for me was, I think I told you this, is English was the language of the household. Spanish was the language of commerce, and French was the language of secrecy. That's what Granny was doing. So we had, you know, she didn't want you to know anything. So having a doll, when I had a doll, I remember my grandmothers would use the doll to teach me how to care for my children. Exactly what you said. I had to wash the doll's clothes. And I was very little. I had to wash the doll's clothes. The doll had to take a nap. They were teaching you social order with the dolls. And you had, if she was washing out somebody else's clothes, you had to wash your doll's clothes. You had a play iron. And there was a sense of normalcy that came with that doll.
But it's also too, Camila, it's also too in terms of normalcy. As I look at some of your dolls, and others too, but particularly yours because of the African costume, one thinks of it as a costume, but Melba will tell you, you actually saw women in Panama dressed that way. Yeah. So essentially what it was, many of those things could have very easily have been my grandmother, because I saw her oftentimes dressed that way. And so there was something about the reality and the use of the dolls.
Yeah, yeah. So what are your thoughts, Cynthia?
Before Cynthia gets started, I just want you to know that Cynthia was very instrumental in our Society of Friends of the West Indian Museum of Panama, because we inaugurated our organization in the year 1981. And a few years later, about 3 or 4 years later, she came to the embassy in Panama. And I think her prior assignment was in Africa. So she brought many African-inspired works of art to the museum, to the work we're doing, and really helped us in that, because our organization in Panama, we are one of the organizations to promote recognition for the Black presence, which for centuries people have played down and undermined, just as has happened in the United States.
Yes.
So Cynthia was on this wavelength with us and helped us in a variety of ways in getting started.
I remember her making the cards for Christmas. I still have them framed, Cynthia. Bosito, the little bus.
Oh, yes.
And, Yeah, so I didn't realize that you were, I knew you were friends, but I didn't realize how influential you were. Oh, you're
Oh,
famous.
yes.
You're too kind, Melva. It was just a pleasure because I had grown up hearing all these stories about Panama and the role of the West Indians in building the economy, the canal, and so many other things there. My paternal grandparents came there from Barbados and my maternal grandparents from Jamaica. So I was very interested in learning more about my Panamanian roots and the history. So it just only seemed natural when I found out there was a West Indian Museum that had an active program to get involved and learn more about my own parents' heritage and the presence, the African presence. Also, because I was coming from West Africa to Panama, and there had been several conferences in Ivory Coast and Benin about the African diaspora, it was fascinating to me then to travel to Panama and then continue learning about how the diaspora manifested itself in that part of the world, and then share what I had learned from my experiences in West Africa.
And that's this book. You remember Melva's book?
Yes.
Yes.
Critical to my work too. I'm just giving you a plug, but
Thank you. Thank
but
you.
it was but it talks about exactly what you said, Cynthia. You don't realize how many different types of Black people there are. You know, they're all represented there. This is her book on African. This is her book on the African ancestry in Panama.
Can you tell us the exact title and it's by Melva Lowe?
Melva Lowe Gooden.
Mhm.
And
It's hard for us to read the cover.
I'll put it out in the chat.
I'll put it in.
Put it in the chat. Okay,
Yeah.
but what's interesting about that is it's talking about Panama, but when you do your studies of the history of the United States, there are great parallels. There are parallels in time, there are parallels in who's coming over, the kinds of skills that these people are bringing with them, and the cooperation between the West Indians, and I call ourselves West Indian, and the Americans, you know, and their ability, the West Indians' ability to survive the hardships of the canal, building the canal, and the kind of life that they lived. I mean, Harrington can tell you more. It was horrendous. And on top of that, it was then on top of all the physical hardship, then you also had to face the discrimination from both the Panamanians and the Americans. It's a miracle that they stayed and that they were able to accomplish it. But also found it interesting is that these men bragged about that canal and their lives as merchant marines. That's how and I'm sure my father too, that's how we learned about world history, was through these men. I didn't know that the canal didn't belong to my grandfathers until maybe 1985. I thought I thought they owned it. I thought they had done everything for it. So, just the pride. This is the beginning of her head.
Cynthia, do you know the name Wang Williams?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody else here know Wang Williams?
Yes.
I think, you know what, Cynthia, you know where Wang Williams was born?
Panama.
He was born in Cologne.
Yeah.
And Gwen Ifield was born in La Boca.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And they're all long lane, these Africans who were there. But, give you one last one, I'll quit, as I said before. But you know the name Kenneth Clark?
Yes.
Who did all the work for the Brown person born? He was born in Cologne.
Oh.
He was born in Cologne and grew up. As a matter of fact, I think he and Wang Williams all came here as youngsters, but they were all Juan Williams tells a story that reminds me so much of my son. Juan Williams tells the story of taking his son to Cologne. And the son looked at him and said to him, Daddy, you came from Cologne is very bad if it's so poor. But I use it in the words of my own son, who said to me at the time as a kid, Dad, if you came from here to where you are, I'm very proud of you. And so Juan Williams tells a story about this transition. But
Well, that's
continue
why,
with your
I mean,
dolls.
making a
I'm
plug-
learning a lot. Huh?
I'm making a plug for the dolls, but this is why the dolls are so important. Not just my dolls, but all the other dolls, is that if you get caught up in the physical situation that these people are in, you will miss their majesty. You will miss their accomplishments just because, like Queen Gosia from the Virgin Islands. If you saw her, she looks a mess. She didn't have any teeth. She looks like just a little something. But her protest is what is also influenced Martin Luther King in nonviolence protests. She was smart enough. She was clever. She's dealing with both the Dutch and I believe it was the Chinese. So you will miss these people's ingenuity unless we tell their story. You'll miss their intelligence. You'll miss their creativity unless we tell their story. And one way we do it with the dolls and like with Cynthia's art, Mohad, was it Mohada Mobetta? Was that the one that got me? Which one was that one?
More Better Taste?
Yes. And
yeah, that was inspired by a Panamanian, a wooden house, a Panamanian house in Cologne.
Right. And those are the kinds of things, her paintings tell story. They make you ask the question, what is this? Who am I looking at? Why are these people in the window? What's this? What's going on? That's what art is supposed to do. That's what the doll makers are doing. They're making you ask questions. And I think that's the difference with the commercial dolls and the art dolls. And there are all kinds of art dolls. Some are more, ours tend to be more realistic. Some that I have up here that you can't see are more, what's the word? Almost Afro-futurist. They're more about the gesture, the impression, but it's about you asking the question, who was this person? What are they doing? A doll embodies that. Even more than a sculpture, because you can't touch a sculpture, you can't make a sculpture move, but a doll you can make move. It's something you can touch.
And Camila, if I could just mention while we still have Cynthia on the screen, Cynthia will be one of the artists alongside you at our program on March 10th, our Sparkle program, Senior Women in the Arts. So that will be artist Cynthia Farrell Johnson, dollmaker Camila Bryce-LaPorte, Jamie Downs, artist. We also have, oh gosh, my brain, poet Joanne Growney, and also Marjorie Hirano, artist Marjorie Hirano. So, am I forgetting one person?
I thought you had, or is that it?
And it's hosted by Neha Misra. And it's March 10th at 2:00 Eastern. So wherever you are, hopefully you can join us and see more of their work and what inspires them. Thank you for sharing, Melva Harrington and Cynthia. I think we lost your video, Camila. We lost your video.
You did.
Did you come back? Let me see. Let me go back and look. I have to scroll through everything here. Let's see.
Let me see. Hold on one second.
If you talk, you'll light up on the screen.
Okay.
Oh, does Lauren is also in your doll class? Does Lauren have a doll to show? No?
Lauren, is she there still?
Yeah, Lauren is, you're muted, Lauren.
Can you see me now?
Yeah,
See me?
with your dolls behind you, it's a good shot.
Okay.
I
And
don't
it's
have any,
clear.
I don't have any new dolls that I have ready to share for tonight. I'm
Okay.
working on a nativity set, and the idea of doing all the research, the colors that I choose, the symbolism that I choose. I also choose not to do flesh tone. That was interesting when you were talking about Black Jesus. I choose not to do or choose like a broad range of flesh tones rather than white or black or whatever, so that I'm trying to find that middle ground so that it is accessible to all, and not like, look, it's white baby Jesus, which there never was blue-eyed baby Jesus. That never existed historically at all. So, but anyway, so I'm working on that. I'm working on a book to go with that. Much different than the original book that I did about couture seasons. Again, looking at the theological implications of and the cultural implications of the nativity and how all of that plays together. But it's again influenced by the doll making
Lauren?
class, and this has been incredible for me in my inspiration of that. What? Yes, who said something? My name.
Lauren, you should tell them that you are a pastor as
Mhm.
well. So
Yeah, I'm just retired, officially retired in October. So that's, yeah, so that's some of my reasoning behind doing the nativity. I've always wanted to do a nativity set, but want to do one that again is more art doll than just here's the Mary Joseph baby Jesus, but really doing the research on it. I'm really enjoying it. And again, don't want to get stuck on facial features either, so that we're thinking, oh, it looks like me, it doesn't look like me, whatever. So I'm trying to figure out how I do this flash of color across the face without it being a particular face, so that it's more accessible to all. And again, when I was a pastor, and this was in my very first church in West Virginia, I asked kids what an angel looked like, and they all said blonde hair, white, and it was, and I then went on to search for, speaking of inaccessible and not being able to find stuff, for angels, that I had a small collection of angels at that point, that were not white and blonde, and that was almost impossible to find. Almost impossible. And as was mentioned earlier, anything with any ethnicity was incredibly expensive. So it was out, so that it wouldn't, it wouldn't be something that you would say, look, here's your angel for Christmas, kid, because it's $60, and the white version is $10. And this is back in the 80s. So alrighty, so yeah, that's what I'm working on, is the nativity right now, but I don't have anything to show. It's all, I
she's
just
also
made the patterns.
she's also a costume designer, right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the couture seasons was I made basically costumes and what the earth is clothed like in each season, what the earth looks like in each season. And again, kind of art doll-ish looking. I made one set that was life size, so regular, whatever a mannequin size is. What is that size? Is that 4 or 6? And then made, this is in the beginning of COVID, made within a week, made 4 Barbie sized ones.
Wow.
Which was just because I had all the time in the world. And the other, it took me 3 years to make it, and I sew all by hand. And Bernadine, I know you do that for historicity, or you have to because of history of the doll. But for me, I do it because I find it incredibly therapeutic. And there's something about spending all that time doing that. So I do a lot of simple embroidery stitches, like blanket stitch pulls it all together for me. So all of the nativity scene, all of the characters are going to be sewn with blanket stitch around the torso, because it just contains them in a way that so yeah. So
in addition to being an artist and minister, Lauren is on our board of directors and is also the host of our quarterly art salon. Our next one will be in April. So for anyone who's on the creative spectrum, writers, I know Melva's a writer, doll makers, artists of all stripes are invited to join us. And I don't have the date in front of me at the moment. We've had so many events. I can usually have things memorized, but yeah, so that will be in April, later part of April, I think, is what we had agreed. Yeah, we'll be putting that out. Great, and so good to see you, Lauren.
Bernadine, may I just ask a question? Bernadine, do you do Spanish dolls?
Well, how can I say?
Let me just tell you why I asked the question, and then you may proceed to do it. Because of the intricacies of some of those. Somebody mentioned embroidery, but the intricacies of some of those dresses, which of course is part of the native Latin Panamanian thing. So that's why I asked the question.
I have not studied Spanish dolls, and actually I was a French major in college. And so I guess you could say that's sort of why I lean towards the French. But most of my attention has been on French dolls.
Well, a lot of the things that I saw both from you and Camila sort of crossed in my mind, because a lot of the African West Indian and a lot of the African and the local dresses in Panama are actually brought from Spain. And so there's this cross. Today you see a number of people, and this is regardless of color. You don't have that particular, the color thing in Panama has a lot to do with culture and representation. So my point is, you see among Panamanian women now, the traditional thing, Melba can speak to this much better, this full garment, like a continuum of these things. The polleras now don't wear pure Spanish thing. They wear some African things to it. So it's beautiful to see how the things have coalesced to make one.
I just really like the intricacy, and I guess you could say the technique for making the clothing in the late 1800s. Luckily for me, the sewing machine was invented a little bit before that time, so I can make my clothing on the machine and still be authentic. I just can't use decorative stitches. But yeah, I'm just really taken at the intricacy and the detail, the ruffling and the lace and all different kinds of pleats. And Camilla and I talk about pleats.
Pleats! Oh my God! She was measuring with a thing. The pleats, I'm like, how do you do that? And the pleats were like this little tiny thing, a 3-inch doll.
Este primero, okay? Uno primero y es más fácil.
Who are you talking?
Somebody was talking. I'm trying to find who it was.
That's Cynthia. Cynthia, please mute your phone.
I think I got her muted.
Okay, good.
So great. So Camila, can you tell us about your process right now, what you're doing?
Right now I'm building the breast. Where's Alicia Gonzalez? Are these too big? Is she there? So all of the dolls have breasts because it makes their costumes look better to me. And these breasts are, this is styrofoam. I started this head.
Mhm.
I'm going to let it dry a little bit and then start really carving in the detail. So they're both the same person. I'll see which one looks most like her when I'm done.
Alicia is at her computer, but her video is not showing. I asked
Okay.
her to
Hey, Camila.
unmute.
Hi,
But let's see.
Alicia.
Hi.
you
So
doing?
yes, I definitely would say the breasts are slightly larger than they actually are, but they actually might be exactly what she would want. So they might turn out really
Well, my
well.
model is her daughter. That's why I'm asking her. But when I put clothes on her, they're gonna look like these girls. See, it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I'll let her see the before so she'll be impressed.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so what were did you have any questions, Alicia?
No questions. I mean, I told you many times before, I'm just completely blown away by your story, how you started, your dedication to it. It's very overwhelming, and I'm so proud of you.
I'm so proud of you too. My cousin, we happen to marry this into the same family. We keep things on the more side.
Can I ask a question? This is Linda Cotto.
Yes.
I have to leave pretty soon, but I just wanted to ask, how does one sign up for her the next session, the date you mentioned, the presentation, and also, is there a website where I can follow the programs more from this center? I'm new to this, and this is a great group.
Yes, and we'd love to have you join us for the Art Salon in April and other programs. You can email me, lisa@silverspringtowncenter.com. But everyone had to register through Zoom. I usually add your emails to our list so that you get our emailings. And you can also join our Silver Spring Town Center Facebook group page to keep updated too. So we'd love to have you. I'd love to also show pictures of what you showed and maybe in our newsletter sometime if you want to email me. So nice to meet you and your dolls.
Linda,
Thank you.
Linda is also a nun. She's an economist. Harrington, she's an
And a nun, she must be like St. Thomas.
Yeah, he's also a Catholic economist too.
She's a sister. Really, you're a nun?
Yes, I am. Religious of the Sacred Heart. Yeah. So.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I'm not wearing my bright clothes. I'm sorry. I'm kind of scandalizing you.
No, that's all right. I'm going to report you. I have great memories of the Franciscans.
Oh, yes, they're wonderful.
Because they were wonderful, and also the Marinos. I think Beverly may know your order better than I do, but...
well, I don't think we're in Panama, you know.
But I think you're in South Africa.
I don't know. We're not.
One of the African countries is where I ran into.
We're in Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, as well as North Africa. Yeah.
Camila may know this better. Well, I not may, but she knows it better than I do. One of our grandparents, my grandmother's sister, Camila.
Yes. Oh, this is a great story.
Yeah, because she was the one, my grandmother that I was saying, when I see the dress, it reminds me of their thing. But she too was a nun. I think it's in some, I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, so one of our cousins, Harrington's grandmother, my great grandmother, they had lots of children, right? Lots of sisters. And one of them went in, they're, very devout West Indian Catholics. And one of them went into the order and ended up, and one of our cousins worked for the State Department and
Mhm.
he was sent to, I believe it was Sierra Leone. It was Sierra Leone.
Wow.
And he went to visit the Mother Superior,
Mhm.
and it turned out to be my great grandmother's sister.
Wow.
Isn't that- so, and the thing about it is, that part of the family, maybe it was Sierra Leone. That part of the family was French speaking Creoles, right?
Mhm.
And not everybody came over. I guess Diana is still there. Not everybody came over as a slave. Some came after slavery. Some rebelled and returned. So that's what my father told me. So I suspect, and when you look at their names, they are, I suspect that she just returned home, that she just went back to what she may have known. But isn't that
Uh-huh.
an amazing story?
Mhm.
I don't know how to
Definitely.
retrieve it from, I don't know how to retrieve the story from the State Department, but he wrote a report about going to this convent and meeting. Can you imagine meeting your great aunt in a convent?
Isn't that something? That's amazing. And in another country. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, great.
Camilla, I have to feed my guinea pigs, so I have to leave.
Guinea pig.
They're biting my feet.
Guinea pigs.
I do animal rescue too, but
What kind of nun are you?
You don't have enough to do. But tell them that the dolls, the dolls that she sells goes to
yeah, it's all charity. It's to the education leadership programs for low-income women and girls. So everything goes to anything I make. It's all completely charity. But and one of the reasons I do animal rescue is because no matter what your political spectrum, ideology, people like animals. And so
Yeah.
it's my way of engaging people who are completely off the political, I'm very liberal, but many of the people I volunteer with are like Trumpsters and whatever, but it's a way of talking to them and engaging with them on something. And that's what I do with dolls as well. It kind of like crosses over political and ideological and ethnic barriers. So I may be rescuing some hoarding situation with someone who's got a gun rack and Confederate flag on her car, but we can converse, because it's animals, and
Wow.
and they get to know me and they get to know them. And so it's the same with dolls. So anyway, but thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Linda, Sister Linda, where are you located?
I'm in Gaithersburg, Maryland, but my
Oh.
sisters are mostly in Washington, D.C. So we have a school. It's Stone Ridge of the Sacred Heart, as well as a Catholic a school that's predominantly Black and Latino in Washington, D.C. as
Which
well.
one is that?
I think it's called St. Raymond's or something, but I could find out more. Okay, and
Wow.
but
So
we are.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
but thank
it's
you
great
very
you're
much.
doing that good work with the animals. They need it.
Well, anyway, but thank you
Yeah.
very much, and I'll have
Thank
to
you so
sign
much.
off.
Nice to
But
meet
again,
you.
Camilla, I'd be happy to remember I've got a sewing date with you, so I'm happy to help out. Okay, once we get. Okay, take care.
And Bernie, are you teaching anymore? Did she hang up?
No, I don't yet. Not yet, Camilla. I'm catching up on my sewing, on my costuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her costuming.
So Camila.
Yes, who's that?
This
Diana.
is Diana. Yeah, you've inspired me to go back to make some. So I saw Lisa's painting and I see you making dolls, so I had to get my embroidery out. But this has been wonderful, and thank you so much.
Oh, I've got
thank you guys for inviting. And wasn't that so? Aren't the Panamanian stories? Don't they remind you of home?
Oh my God, yeah.
That's so we should have a whole program on the storytelling.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. If you wanted, I didn't know you guys could see me. It's kind of addictive. I've become interested in tiny house. We hosted a tiny house. How do I spotlight myself too? Oh, here I am.
Before you go into that, I'm going to say good night.
Oh,
Good night.
Good
night.
I'm
For
Bernie.
the opportunity, and I can't wait to see what your finished doll looks like, Carmela.
Okay, Beatrice.
Good night, everybody. Take care.
Okay, we'll
night.
Oh,
Thank you for
that's so great.
Oh,
Oh
nice.
my
this
goodness.
is a Adobe. I'm doing a Mexican Adobe.
It looks like a
right-
Puebla. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've ordered the little, the sister Linda's gone, but I ordered the little, Our Lady of Guadalupe, to put in here. And
Oh.
it's open air in the top because, I mean, it's not to scale, obviously, but I've got, that's the bathroom.
Oh, that's
It's an
wonderful.
open platform. It's an open floor plan. And I made the fireplace. But the idea is there's like in these kind of houses, they don't usually have windows. They have the center is just an open patio.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
your windows are on the inside for protection.
yeah.
So people keep asking where my windows are. And then this is the upstairs bedroom loft here.
Oh,
But I've
nice.
gotten really
It's
into
airy.
it because we hosted Marcy, artist Marcy Wolf Hubbard, to teach tiny houses. And Lauren is also a tiny house builder. And so this is my second one that I'm doing, but this was my first.
Oh, that's lovely.
And it's actually a town center.
Oh,
And
that's really lovely.
it's kind of related to dolls, because the miniatures and
Yeah, yeah.
but it's fun. You see the Museum of Anthropology, Diana. I've worked
Oh,
in a
that's so
Museum of
cute.
Anthropology and in an opera, San Diego Opera, and here's an art center which is supposed to represent SSTCI. I realized I've made all these places that are places I've worked.
Yeah.
Like I have a pharmacy in here and a flower shop and a record store.
Oh, that's lovely.
So it was kind of places that I've worked, but it's been really fun. I didn't realize, I could not understand why people were so into the tiny houses. And I guess because you spend so much time with the process and then it ends up representing something, either telling a story or from your hopes and dreams, maybe. So it's, mine was supposed to be multicultural, but hidden in a Mexican adobe house. But there's a house that looks like this in San Diego that it's in a really bad area, like near auto places. And I used to always tell my mom, I want that little house. Because it was so
well,
cute. It was kind of like this. It's little like that. And it was built in 1920.
That's lovely. One of my best memories is spending a night in the area in that little upstairs part of an adobe house in Taos, New Mexico. And I mean, I stayed up the entire night because you could see the stars and you could see the very subtle changes in the sky. And it was one of the most memorable times of my life. So when I saw that, it just brought it all back. So thank you. I better get off the phone because I have to do some stuff tomorrow. But this is great. Okay, take care.
And we'll let Camila answer some final questions.
Wait,
Hi,
Mom.
Mom.
Hi, Lisa. I tried to call you. Call me.
Mom,
I know. I tried calling you too. I think you guys are going to bed early, maybe because you're still on Senegal time, right?
Call me here. Call me here on my mommy's phone. Call me right after.
Oh, where's my? Oh, there it is.
Auntie Camilla's doing her program right now.
Yeah.
I'll call you.
Okay, we'll talk later. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay, so Camila, if you could. Does anyone have any final questions for Camila before we wrap up? Oh gosh.
Well, I just want to say I'm so happy.
Lisa, I have a question.
Terry has a question.
Yeah, no, it's just really, this goes way back to the beginning, Camilla. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
When you're talking about the Garifuna, people from Honduras, So I was there 40 years
You want to
ago,
show
I
your
guess.
video, Terry?
No, I don't, but
Oh,
but anyway, I was there about 40 years ago, and it was really, I would say, inaccessible. It was really hard to get there. We had to climb through rocks and swam through the ocean to get there. And we were actually in the town of Trujillo for in Peace Corps with at our sector conference. And one afternoon we went over there. And I was just wondering how you got there. You can get there by boat, but that was
Well, you know, the Garifuna are all over, right? So,
well in Honduras, that part, yeah.
but but the
Okay.
place my
I think they were shipwrecked there in Honduras.
the shipwreck was in St. Vincent.
Okay.
So these people are descendants of the Black, well, they call them the Black Carib, but they were
Right.
Nigerians who the folklore is it was a ship full of Nigerians. It's either Ibibio or Igbo. I think they're Ibibio. And the people ran into the hills. This is in St. Vincent. And the first group was enslaved by the Carib. And there was another group that came, and they eventually dominated the Carib, and they intermarried. And they lived peacefully in St. Vincent, as peaceful as they could, with the French planters that were there. But when the British came, they wanted to recapture them. So they're maroon people. They wanted to recapture them, and they engaged in almost 100-year war with the British. At the end of that conflict, their leader, I believe his name is Joseph Chateaubriand, and his wife Baruda. He had many wives, but this one is the one. They drew up a letter of an agreement, and with the understanding that the British were going to take them back to Africa. Now, by now, they're a different people.
Right, right.
And they, the lighter skinned Arawak people with whom the Carib people with whom they had intermarried were left behind in St. Vincent. And the darker skinned ones, the ones that they believed were more problematic for the English, were shipped away. They were told that they were going to Africa, but what they actually did was drop them off in Roatan and also in Jamaica. They negotiated with the Spanish government. It was of the 4,000 people that were forcibly taken out of St. Vincent, only 2,000 or 2,500 actually survived. And when they were placed on Roatan, they felt like there was not enough room for all of them to, for their families to grow and prosper and be free. So the Spanish government allowed them to move to different parts of Central America. They moved to Honduras. They are found in Guatemala, Honduras, all the way to Costa Rica. And then there was another group that moved into British Honduras. And so that group is bilingual.
these are the Garifuna you're talking about.
And they don't, they live by the ocean. They're not that difficult to get. Well, some live by the ocean. Some live closer to the Mayans, and they have adopted now Mayan culture. What's interesting about them now is that during the age of COVID, and this is one of the things that is so amazing, is that the Garifuna have always practiced an African religion and African healing practices as their indigenous practices, just like the Mayan. And they have, the Mayan and the Garifuna in Belize have a lower incident of COVID than those living in urban areas. And it's because they drink this drink every day. It's a form of like basil and ginger and some other stuff all mixed together, but they have it every day. as a way of opening up their lungs. And, you know, COVID affects what? Your breathing. So they've had a very low incident so far of COVID. But anyway, so there are two groups of Garifuna, the English speaking and the Spanish speaking. And the English speaking actually have more mobility. Of course, in the United States, there are 100,000 of them here. Than say the Honduran, the Guatemalan, or the
and the Garifuna are are they mixed with the Carib indigenous people?
Yeah, biologically and culturally. A lot of them are still straight up African. I mean, if you did their DNA, you're going to get Nigeria, right? So, but there are a lot who have Native and African ancestry. And from what I can see, I see a lot of also mestizo, a lot of mixture with, it looks like some have now white ancestry, you know, largely indigenous and Black, but I'm seeing more and more. So they have, the Garifuna, there's a woman here, her name is Barbara Norales, and I will introduce you to her. Linda, you can, Lisa, you can share her information, but they're starting a film festival here. They're very organized in California and in New York. You know, they have their festivals all the time.
What's her name? Linda Gonzalez?
Barbara Norales. Barbara Norales.
Okay.
I'll send it through.
Okay.
So I'll get her permission and then send it to you so you can talk to her. Really interesting woman. And she could probably, but she's the one that told me about Beruda. And also one of my aunts who lived in Colón, she said during the time of the canal, the Garifuna were among the people that came to Panama. This is her recollection, and settled in Colón, which was, you know, it's really a Black town on the Atlantic side. It's the closest one to, like, you know, you find a lot of Jamaican descendants there. So she said that there were a lot of Spanish speaking Blacks coming in from Central America, and among them the Garifuna. So they're very interesting people. They've never really been enslaved. They have an equivalent group in Peru in an area called Esmeralda. Now, people like that who kind of have the people from Esmeralda are also Nigerian descendants, as opposed to the ones in Quito. They are much more attached to an Afrocentric way of life, and they have a great oral tradition, really wonderful poetry and stuff like that coming out of that community. But you know, Black people pay the price for that independence, and for that kind of for trying to be self-determined. Well, for the price for self-determination is very, very high for Black people. And in places like Nicaragua, Honduras, parts of Honduras where the drugs trades are really high because they have shoreline communities.
Right, that's exactly what this was.
Right. And like now, the taro, which is an important part, not only of their community, but of their diet, it's being replaced by palm oil because, you know, it's more lucrative for the government. So there's a lot to do. And also the other thing that's concerning is they're very vulnerable to climate change. When those hurricanes, which rarely come to Central America, not like it does to, you know, certain parts of Central America don't get hit.
And they're right on the coast.
They're right on the coast. And so one of the reasons to work to preserve them is that they're carrying so much history and culture. You know, that is the, so the Garifuna have started an indigenous film festival. It covers all, you know, it's like an international indigenous film festival. So they covered the concerns of people from as far away as Australia. And it's coming out of California. When I get permission, I'll share that, you know, I'll give the information.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but you know, Lisa, consider this is that they're looking for venues. So maybe there's something you can do, you know, maybe there's a way, I don't know how it works, you know, now with Zoom.
I was gonna say, do they do it?
Do they Zoom? Because we can always feature people that way.
Yeah, they have to Zoom because of the COVID. They have a
Right.
small theater in California that's giving them access, but you know, I'll let you talk to them and see if it's anything there, if it's anything that's workable. But yeah, but the list of films and their concern about the world is just, you know, it's remarkable. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was someone who was trying to make a comment to you, just as Terry was asking.
Okay.
Who was it that was trying to say something? I don't want to, let's see. Was it? Some people are
Well,
muted.
I wanted to just say how pleased I am to watch Camila go through the process of actually making the doll, and I'm saying, boy, it certainly is much more time consuming and demands such technical skills that, you know, it really I'm impressed.
Thank you. Thank you, Melva.
I'm impressed. So it was good to have
good.
that you
Yeah.
shared that with us.
Also, I was thinking that maybe what we could do is organize to come up with a doll that is specifically for your organization. I think you and I talked about this.
Have to be a penguin.
Wouldn't that be good? Then you
A
can
penguin. Terry said it should be a penguin for Silver Spring.
a penguin.
That's Silver Spring.
But we're talking about to help the. Okay, we'll make a penguin, but we also want to make one that is reflective of the people who, you know, we were talking about the immigrants who are now here, but who's, you know, they may have their forefathers may have come out of the Caribbean or Panama or something like that. Maybe design some relatively inexpensive dolls that could help.
Do you ever mix cultural traditions within the clothing?
Absolutely.
You do? So you'll incorporate, yeah, I mean, because the women that you represent too were from somewhere from diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, I'm not as the Native American, Julie, let's see if I can even reach her. Julie, the Black Seminole doll is probably the most, she's carrying a lot of traditions. I've seen
Multicultural.
Multicultural doll. See if I can get her without.
Yeah.
Come on. Use my back. Julie. Well, I call her Julie. Her last name is really July. And
yeah.
So
wow.
She is a Gullah descendant, right? And also Muskogee and Muscogee. So and a Seminole. So this necklace, I think Linda helped me with this. This necklace, the Seminoles were silver people.
Oh.
And they also collected shells. So she has the shell coins. These are Balboas. right? Like what we would have in Panama.
Mhm.
The Seminole, the Seminole, indigenous Seminole Indians are actually, you know, the Seminoles didn't exist before Europeans arrived in Florida and Georgia. They are a tribe that's made up of many tribes. So Cherokee,
Oh,
Choctaw,
right, because they were displaced.
that's right, they were displaced. So the beads reflect that. And the
Mm.
Black Seminoles didn't have as many beads as the Native American Seminoles. They had fewer beads. Each of the colors represents something. And each of the beads represents something, but I can't remember right now. I have it written down. So her costume is similar to what the Muskogos from Mexico. What did we say? Nacimiento. It's similar to what they would wear, and they still maintain the head tie that the Gullahs wore. So if you look at Gullah, you know, if you go look at contemporary Gullah when they're performing, they have a head tie like this. The Muskogos, if you go look at them, they have that too. So then the Seminoles have a lot of ribbon, and that's because it's sold, right? They could manufacture it and sell it to tourists. The Muskogos and the Muskogees don't have as much ribbon, so she doesn't have as much ribbon. And this ribbon here that I put on reflects her south western travels. So the Muskogos, you have to be very impressed with these people.
Where did the Muskogo live?
That's Nacimiento. Remember that group of the group of Maroons in Mexico? You remember that we talked about that?
Oh, that there were some Maroons in Mexico.
They are descendants of the Gullah.
Oh,
Gullah's more Georgia though.
yeah, the Sea Islands of Georgia, South Carolina.
Sea Island, but the Sea Island. But what happened is during slavery, the Spanish government would entice them to leave the Sea Islands, to leave Georgia, and come to Florida. And because they were the workforce of you know, the rice plantation, so they could deplete the Americans of their economy. And the way they had it set up, they could actually live in autonomous villages, pretty much so. And also they came to South Florida with great agricultural skills. The Gullah came to the United States with great skills, and their descendants also carried on those skills.
Right,
So,
and because they were isolated on the Sea Islands, they maintained the most of their African heritage from Sierra Leone.
Right. And a lot of these people were able to practice their African in Spanish East Florida. They were able to maintain it. Like they would dress like the Indians, but they were actually maintaining their own culture, and their culture is distinct. They have elements, of course, they have elements of the Native American culture, but they became great warriors. They fought alongside the Seminoles, as I said, against the Americans. Andrew Jackson was so angry with these people. He wanted to kill them, and he wanted them returned to, he felt they were property and wanted them returned to Georgia. And of course, they didn't want to do that. So they were great guerrilla fighters, and they fought in those swamps until they couldn't fight. And one of the reasons her husband fought so hard is that they actually were indentured to the Native Americans. They worked out something since they were on native land, but the natives, the Seminoles, were not, they were woodland people. They were not farmers. And what they did was they paid them a tribute. So if I can grow, if I can grow corn or whatever it was they were growing,
Mhm.
then I'll give you some for, for your protection on your land. So they had that kind of arrangement. But none of these people are authentic. They're more symbolic than anything. So she has on even the
But
boots.
she's not based on a particular person. She's representing.
She is based on a particular person.
She is.
Susan July Horse was the wife of Juan Caballo, but there's
Right.
very little written about her. Everything is directed, everything celebrates her husband, who was a great warrior and a diplomat. He fought until the end. But part of the reason he fought was to keep his wife out of slavery and their son. So, but people did not pay attention to the fact that when he left home, she had to fight. She had to fight too. And she had to maintain culture. That culture would not be alive if she and her cohorts hadn't been fearless themselves. I mean,
Right.
imagine
Yeah, amazing. They were fierce women.
Right, fierce women. So they are named after they represent actual people, but the costumes may not be authentic to that group. The costumes are there to tell a story.
Right. Okay, that's what I was kind of wondering too.
Yeah. Where Linda and Bernie, they research it down. What Bernie didn't tell you is that she goes as far as to Germany to get the fabric that she wants. She's not fooling around.
Right.
Linda too.
Right. They're more reproductionists in that regard, and yours is tied to the stories, and
mine's tied
to which is great. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we could just chat all night. That's how you and I always are when we talk on the phone. Yeah. We can talk forever.
Thank you all for showing up.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You had a good
Camila.
turnout. You had a great turnout,
Really?
actually.
Yeah, well, she's famous.
It's my family.
So where have you displayed any of these anywhere?
Bernie, Linda, and I were at Sandy Spring Museum.
Okay, I've never been there because every time I go there, it's like open only for kids for field trips on Black History Month.
Yeah.
The Saturdays of Black History Month. It's never been like a regular. I think it's just field trips, isn't it?
No,
it seems like.
It's actually a very good agricultural museum. It's a very good museum. Very small.
Yeah.
Community focused, but they're beginning to branch out.
Okay, because as I said, a friend of mine had an art show there, and
Yeah.
so I want to go see it, and it, just when I kept on checking, it's like only on weekends and only for kids with field trips. So during the week, it's only with kids.
Well, and it's not open during COVID, but they're doing.
Well, no, I know.
Yeah. They have sculpture garden, and they've been bringing food trucks like before it got cold. And I'm guessing they're going to continue doing that.
Yeah. And they do advocacy work. Like they did, they had an exhibition of Jewish and Muslim artists.
Right. That's what she was.
Yeah. So they do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I was impressed with what they do. It's just the accessibility.
Yeah. But we have a lot of little museums. There may be, if things work out, I'll be there. I'll be in Baltimore with some other doll artists, and some of these doll artists. I don't have any right here.
Okay. What about the African American Museum downtown? Because they have that one space for special exhibits. But my friend who was the chief curator, retired last year. But I'm sure I know she still has connections there. And she's still in touch with them. But
there's a great doll artist by the name of Francine Haskins.
Okay.
Who, shows down there, exhibits down there. Her stuff is off the charts. It's I don't even know what you would call it. It's futuristic. It's satirical. She does some stuff. She did a take on the bombing of the church in Birmingham, and the it was of a young boy who was brother to one of the girls, and this is a doll, and the boy went mute after the bombing, you know.
Yeah.
And this doll is so moving. It's just amazing. She has him. It's a she has him
What-
dressed in the little boy's clothes, so it actually looks like a little person.
And what's her
And
name?
Francine Haskins, and another one,
So that like Francine Haskins is
the artist that is down at that museum.
okay.
He has a
And she's local, Camilla?
yes, she's Washington D.C.
Because let me just tell, I mean, this is going off track, but a friend of mine, good friend of mine, her father was a minister in Massachusetts. I'm not outside of Boston because they have they have a museum there. But anyway, he was what is it called? He was sent down to Birmingham for a couple of years, and so the whole family was moved down there for a couple of years. And the day of the bombing, he was preaching at another church, but on the way home from church to home for lunch, he heard about it.
Wow.
So he called a couple of the other ministers, and no one else would go with him. So he and his wife went alone to the church, and things had sort of quieted down because the bombers were then wreaking havoc in other parts of Birmingham. They had finished up there, so they went on, and the families who had been at the church were at the hospital. So they picked up shards of glass, and that's what's at the Smithsonian. That's what's at the African American Museum.
Oh.
Or because I remember she had a little, I think in her house, a send off before they took it down to the museum. It was before it opened up.
Yeah.
But that's where they got those. It was from her they called him Jim Jimerson, but I don't know what his real first name was. It may have been Jim, but I just don't know her name's Jim. But anyway, so that's pretty cool. I'll ask her about that. So that's the okay.
So yeah, ask about that. And Lisa Francine is one of the artists we talked about possibly doing something in the summer. She's one of the artists I wanted to bring in. She's very deep. There's also Deborah Grayson, who lives in Silver Spring. Several of the artists live right around here. And James Baldwin's little sister, Paula Whaley, she lives in Baltimore. Kabibi Ojongo, she lives in Baltimore. You know, Schroeder Cherry, who's a puppeteer, lives in Baltimore. We have a lot of people right here that would be interesting to talk to, and also explore how, especially in this time, how faith and healing has affected their doll making. It has had a serious impact on that community. COVID and Trump, you know, the combined duo. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting when Trump says he's done more for Black people than any other president. In a way, he's right, because he's really galvanized people. I mean, I think the Black Lives Matter, that would not have happened but for Trump, I don't think. I really don't think it would have. And he really did galvanize people, but I don't think that's what he meant when he said that. But
no idea what it means anymore.
So, yeah, who knows?
But he definitely impacted the art form and the people who do the art. It's interesting to see who's taking off. People like Schroeder and Kabibi, they're just moving. Every day they're creating something. Diana, every day they're creating something. And others have to take their time and regroup before, you know, but in both cases, it's about healing. You don't want to impose your bad feelings on your art, especially if you're a doll maker.
Oh, because they carry energy, right?
Correct. Because
It could be,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about voodoo, but that wasn't part of this.
No, and voodoo's a whole, that's a whole other conversation. I'm not a voodoo expert, but what I can tell you is that let me just do this. A lot of what you're hearing, especially in this country, is incorrect.
What I know is from New Orleans, so that's it's pretty limited, but it's that one.
No, it's incorrect. It's not what it was intended to be. And I don't know. It's annoying to me, but I also understand that things change and people have whatever perceptions they have. That's not what it was intended to be.
Oh no, I don't think that's the way. For at least what I've seen, it's not a dark art or anything in New Orleans. It's a way of reaching back.
Yes, and that's the part that they don't.
The spiritual part.
They don't understand, and they've commercialized it until, well, maybe by commercializing it distracts people, but for me it's an annoyance, because they're missing the significance. It's not only of voodoo, but all of that stuff, what it was intended for, and the circumstances under which people turn to them. It doesn't have to be voodoo. There are other things too. People are more and more people are turning to those forms of worship and that's we're entering an era where people just don't trust anymore. That's also part of the Trump effect,
Right. And when you're faced with some of these challenges, these really difficult situations that some of these women warriors, faced, they had to be resourceful and use their wits and their knowledge about the herbs, and they also use spiritual knowledge, whatever they could use to help them, their situation.
Right. And it's demonized because they're Black or they're poor or they're whatever. They did the same thing with a lot of European folk religions, to put it down, to cascade it, to do whatever gave you strength, they wanted to take away from it.
Right.
But we had the added burden of race and and enslavement. And what's interesting is also that the very thing that people were afraid of is exactly why they brought these people there in the first place. If you read the slave narratives about their relationship, about white doctors, male doctors' relationships with these Black women who were expert in
healing arts.
No, ethnobotany. They knew what they were doing with the plants, and they combined their knowledge, of course, with their religion. But we do that too, right?
Right.
So, but it's frightening. But at the same time, it's interesting to read the narratives and hear both Black and white talk about the Black women that were, say, in attendance for a difficult birth, or if they either the enslaved or an indentured. They did a lot of practice with the white indentured. What that woman or that man that they called a conjurer or an obia practitioner did. they were using herbs, they were using their knowledge and healing people. And some of those practices are still around. And what's interesting is that the big drug manufacturers have people mining the field, going to places like Suriname and places where these practices still exist. And that bare aspirin that you're taking, or that, that high blood pressure medication, is coming from the same source. They're just not getting paid for it.
Right.
So, it's pretty interesting. It's all interesting. So, where do the dolls fit into this? They're actually telling a story.
They are.
Yeah.
They're, wow, it's just fascinating. You're gonna have to write a book, Camila.
I'll sit with you. You
With-
make the house and I'll write the book.
Yeah. I'll get
Yeah.
the licenses.
Yes.
Great.
It's great. Thank you, Lisa. For
Okay.
Thank you so much, Camila. It's been
Yeah,
fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
thanks. Thanks.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. And
Are we the
I
only
hope
ones
you'll
left?
join us again Monday as our Peace Corps panel. And it's a discussion more about lifestyle, how the Peace Corps experience affected your lifestyle. And we have all corners of the world represented. And anyway,
I'm gonna.
Terry, I'm sure you'll be there too. Oh, I've got to
I don't know. I've got three things
save the
going on.
chat. What's up?
I've got I've got a lot going on Monday. I want to, but we have a Smith program too. So
Right.
it's sorry about. So,
Yeah.
Nice meeting you, Terry.
Yeah, it was great meeting you
We'll send
and seeing Cynthia. I forgot to ask. I guess she left, but I forgot to